Hello friends, my name is Christina Grozik and I'm with a documentary called Going Om. And Going Om is a exploration of sound and how we use sound and why that's important. And if you are interested in finding out more about the film, you can always go to our website, www.goingomfilm.com. And because sound is so important, we've decided to carry on the discussion about it and talk with a variety of people about how they use sound and why that's important in their world. And today we have really special guests. I'm so excited to be able to speak with this gentleman who we were introduced by a mutual friend, Lisa. So thank you, Lisa, so much. But we've got James Johann with us. So hello, James. How are you?
Hello, nice to be with you. This should be interesting conversation.
I know, I'm really excited, but I was thinking, so much of the way, performance happens, right? I'm sure sound impacts that to some degree, both from the performer delivering and then the performer receiving what the audience is giving back. So you've done so many different things, and I'm so excited to go on this journey with you today. So, you've done work for Comedy Central, you've done work for CMT, you've played venues all over the country, large venues, 10,000 people venues, to people, that are playing darts and having conversations on the side venues, right? So you've had a really good range of experiences, and then you've done late night talk shows. So you've run the gamut. You've had a really awesome and interesting career. You've been doing this for over a decade. And, I will tell you that, I give you so many props and so much credit, because I think if somebody said, hey, Christina, go up on a stage and tell jokes, I don't know if that's in my constitution, but I give you so much credit and props for doing it for sure. So, thank you. Thank you for being here today. I really appreciate you taking the time out. I know things are really busy for you right now. So let's start with maybe how you prepare material, like what goes into preparing. And if you're like, well, that's not the term we use, then please correct me, because I don't know the terminology in the world of, comedy. But would it be called a set when you get out and perform something?
Yeah, a
Okay,
lot of
so
people call it your skit or something, and that's not right. It's not a skit. It's like your comedy set, right? That's what we call it.
okay, yay, so we're off to a good start.
Off to a
Yay, I
good
got
start.
that term right. So a set. So when you're creating that set and you're creating your material, how much goes into thinking about the timing in terms of making those pauses? Or maybe you raise your voice in a certain part, or maybe you lower your voice, or maybe you do some sound effect, right?
Right.
For effect. So how does all of that play into the creation of your material?
Well, it's a good question. A lot of times when I'm writing it, I can hear some stuff that I want to do in my head. Like I know I want to get loud here, or I want to soften this up. But a lot of that actually, it's just you have to get out. There's really only one way to find out, and that's to actually deliver it. And that's in front of a live audience. So even though there'll be things I go, I know I need to do this loud, or maybe I just scream something here, or whatever I want to do for effect. uh, you can try it, but that may not always be the most effective way. So really testing it in front of a live audience is the best way. But there's a lot of thought that goes into that. And I learned when I was 12, 13, I went to Catholic school, and my mom, I think she'd have been more happy if she'd have found drugs in my room than comedy tapes. Seriously. So I would sneak these tapes in, and I would flip and flip like Eddie Murphy tapes or George Carlin, and I would learn their timing and their pacing of things. And I think that really helped me as far as learning how to pace stuff out into, because every word counts, every pause counts, and a lot of times it's not something you actually plan out, but you can just kind of feel it, you know. But I think that my sense of timing came from just listening to the professionals and really figuring out how they were delivering stuff. But yeah, a lot of that stuff you can get a laugh sometimes with silence, and a lot of times, as a matter of fact, if you want to do something dirty, you just stop where you need to stop and let them do the dirty part in their head, and you just kind of shut up. So it works all kinds of ways. So, but it's definitely something that I think about anyway.
So is there like, I know with like script writing or something of that nature, there's like a formula. It's like,
Mhm.
within this page count, you need to hit this marker. Within this page count, you hit this marker. Is there some kind of like comedic formula like that that you you know, you hit
There
two.
are. I was told in the beginning, and if you watch any typical old sitcom, say like Seinfeld or something, they seriously do have like a laugh per minute, like a laugh, a ratio, like how many laughs per minute. And you can get that mathematical with it, but I usually don't. But I don't like to go too long on stage without a laugh. I've seen people who can deliver long stories, and then at the end there's a big payoff. That's really not my style. I like the laughs to keep coming. And if you take a really long time to get to your punchline, it better be worth it. It really better be funny if you do a whole big setup. And like my rule of thumb is I like my jokes to fit on like a 3x5 card. Like if it takes much more than that to write out, it's probably too long. And one of my first open mic coaches taught me about word economy. And I'm not talking about just taking out words that don't need to be there. That's necessary. But I'm talking about syllables, anything that thing has to be just as tight as you can get it. And you don't need any extra fat on anything. You know what I'm saying? It's just got to be, these are the words I need. These are the only words I need to get to the joke and get to that funny as quick as possible. So that's something I do think about when I write jokes. If there's some stuff in there, it's too much description or it doesn't need to be there, gone.
You know, I love that and I appreciate that so much. And I think that can apply to just everyday life too.
Yeah, don't you wish
Because
some people could wrap it up a little quicker with their stories? Come on, get to the point.
there's
And everyone
actually,
has seen someone who really can't tell a joke. They take way too long, and okay, this jokes usually come in threes. You're like, okay, get to the funny part, and then they just take 15 minutes to tell a 2-second joke. It's like, hmm. So some people are very good storytellers and can pull that off, but I like it quick and to the point.
yeah, I appreciate that. And there's a comedian out there that I did see one of his, and he has a whole segment about keeping the conversation short, and he equates it to like a film set where he goes, and cut, that's a wrap,
Right.
and I'm like, I love
We
that
wish,
so much.
we wish we could do that in real life so bad.
Yeah,
It saves
yeah.
so much time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because then it also makes, I mean, I know we're in different worlds. I work more in like the integrated wellness kind of, path. And we talk about words and thoughts and actions and how to really choose them carefully. But I mean, that's what you're saying you do as well. And I think it just makes the impact so much important,
Yeah. Well,
when
there's
we,
the old saying that brevity is the soul of wit. So if you want to sound really witty, make it quick and make it short and sweet and funny. So you kind of you take too long to get to your point. It's not as good, in my opinion. So
Yeah, yeah, I think we have the same style in that way for sure. So you were talking about, so after you have your material, the way of knowing is to perform it. So do you ever rehearse? Do you ever record yourself, either like video record or audio, or then do it like actors would do at a table read when they read it in front of people for feedback? Do you ever do something like that to rehearse it first so you know what's working, what's not, before you get out on the stage and deliver it to a group of people?
beforehand, before an audience, I don't really test it. I might test it on a friend or something and see if they laugh, but more often than not, I just kind of read it out loud to see if I think the wording is right. And a lot of times what I'll do is I build my jokes backwards. Like, let's say I want this, I know I want to say this line. This is my funny line. These have the right words in it. So that's the line I want to end on. And then I'll work backwards and go, well, how do I set that up to get there? Because that just seems to work better for me. And that way, you're going to end on the big, boom. So I do a lot of that. I do it. And I will read stuff out loud to see how it sounds to my ear. But a lot of times it's just kind of innate. You kind of know it's natural. And I like to do my comedy the way I speak. So that's kind of easy too. So, sometimes if I'll write something, I go, well, I don't really talk like that. I know I have to switch it around a little because that doesn't sound like me or whatever. So, but there's a lot of that kind of goes on in my head, and I will read stuff out loud. I don't really practice in front of a mirror. I heard John Belushi used to, because he had the great eyebrows and he would work on his facial expressions and stuff. But I don't really use a mirror or anything. But I've been known to be sitting in my room talking to myself. So it happens.
Yeah, I would imagine for sure, just to hear it. Or, I mean, I would probably be the person that would record it and want to hear it back just to see, like, oh, in my head that sounded so funny, or writing it out, it sounded, but now that I'm hearing it, I don't know, maybe I'll revisit that point. So,
Yeah.
I know you've played all over the place, or performed. I guess perform would be the term we're looking for here, right? You've performed all over the place. So How does it impact you when you're playing to maybe 10,000 people or a late night talk show or something in, a smaller venue where there's still activity going around in the venue, like you can hear a conversation off to the side. What kind of
Right.
impact does that have on you as the performer?
Well, they're all a little different in their own way, but the main thing I think is the energy of the place. So when I used to open for the blue collar guys, I mean, we're talking Los Angeles amphitheater and places that hold 7, 8, 10,000 people. Those are huge comedy shows. That's like a rock and roll show, right? And the thing with that is there's so much energy out there that you just kind of have to barrel through. And whatever's going, I was usually the one that went out first. I was the opening act. So people are still finding their seats, and there's a lot of commotion going on. They're waiting for Larry the Cable Guy, but I got to go out and just kind of let everything happen and just focus on the people who are listening, which is majority of them, but there's still a lot of commotion going on. So you just kind of muscle through. And then you have, comedy club shows, which those are the best because everyone's seated, everyone knows when the show starts and everyone's focused when the show starts. And then you'll do, little bars and stuff that have a comedy night. And then that can get really ugly. I mean, they got the dart machine going, they got people playing pool. I've had places that won't even turn off the sports games on TV, they'll turn them down for you. But everything that's outside input distracts from the show because comedy is such a verbal thing. You really have to hear every word. If people aren't paying attention or there's too much commotion or even if the bar is too loud, it's like, man, this is really affecting the performance. So clubs, in my opinion, are the best places. Don't get me wrong, I love the 10,000 people, but ideally for comedy, and also when you do those theaters, I've stood backstage when the other acts are on stage, and when you're behind the performer on it, the sound is meant to go that way. And you stand behind them and it just sounds like mumbo jumbo. It's just mumbled and it's really hard to understand because those places are made for concerts and plays, and the acoustics in there are wonderful. And you walk out and grab that mic and it's like your voice, it sounds like the voice of God or something. You're just like, oh wow, this is so awesome. So the sound in the theaters is the best, but they
Okay.
all have their own challenges. And I would rather be in clubs or at 10,000 people because the bar shows will wear you out. They do make you stronger as a comic to go in there and be able to handle that rowdy room, but you don't want to do too many of those. It'll depress you. It'll lower your self-esteem for sure.
Well, I like how you presented all of that, and I think it's funny because we have like parallel paths here. We're working on different ends of the spectrum, but parallel paths in the way that I often teach people to work through what could appear to be challenging situations, and you have to go through the storm and work through the storm, right?
Right.
And then how to kind of harness your power and focus your mind when those distractions fall into your path, how to work through them. So, I mean, you just described what could be perceived as a lot of different distractions going on in a venue. So, how do you focus your mind so it doesn't affect your performance?
Well, luckily I know my act very well. I mean, my jokes have been tried and tested, so I know. And even if I get distracted or I have to stop to deal with a heckler or somebody drops, there's a waitress drops a tray full of drinks, something's going to happen. Make a quick joke and you get back to it. And I will say this: a lot of comics just hate hecklers. I like a good playful heckler because then I can play with them. I don't like mean stuff. I don't want them yelling "you suck" or whatever. That's just mean. But if they say something funny, I'll give them credit. I'll go, okay, man, that was funny, and I might go back and forth with them for a minute. But I never like to get too far out in the weeds. And some guys I've seen can go up there and just do that all day. They just riff off the crowd, and that's not my style. But some people are very good at that. It's just not me. But I just know my act, and if something happens, I deal with it as quickly as I can and get back to it. Because if you lose focus too much, the crowd will start to lose focus as well. So you don't want that.
Yeah, because I imagine all of those sounds, especially someone that isn't the kind heckler, but the heckler that's, maybe, I don't know, got some chip on their shoulder and they're working through some issues, so they're going to try to take it out on everyone else, right? I imagine that could really kind of throw someone that's not solid on their ground a little bit off course. And plus,
Oh
you have to
yeah.
stay in the present moment. You really have to be focused and present so it doesn't throw you off your course, right? So to be able to navigate those kinds of situations, I think are so interesting. And again, give you so many props for what you do and how you're doing it, because I would think that that could really throw someone a curveball for sure.
Yeah, but the more you do it, the more experience you get, the more you get to deal with it. And there's always some stock lines that you can use. You know, there's plenty of things you can say to a heckler to shut them down. And a lot of times I'll have a little secret signal with the door guy if somebody's being too loud. I'll be like, hey, about a glass of water at table 3. And, you know, then they go over and shut them up. You never know what's going to happen. I was working in somewhere in, I think I was in Knoxville one time. And there was a little U-shaped bar right around the stage, and then the rest of the crowd was behind. Well, I had an older guy sitting here, and he was saying stuff to me that only really I and a couple people around him could hear. You know, he's just mumbling stuff, and he's really ticking me off, you know, but I can't jump on him because the rest of the crowd can't really hear it. So if I jump all over this guy and, you know, tell him to shut up or whatever, they're like, what's his problem? So you have to be really careful. But he was driving me nuts because he wasn't heckling loudly enough for, you know, I'm like, if you're going to heckle, do it so everyone can hear. Don't be doing this little whisper stuff to me on the side of the stage, because that seems like cheating.
Yeah. So how did you handle it? How did you work through
I
that?
just muscled through it and ignored him. And then after the show, he's always one of the guys, I really helped you out, didn't I? No, you kind of screwed up my whole show. And that's the funny thing about hecklers. Most of the hecklers after the show, they really do think they've helped the show. They will throw you off your game and get you mixed up and make you forget where you're at sometimes. And they come up like, I really helped you out. I'm like, oh, no, you didn't at all. It's funny how they think that, though.
Well, I guess they helped you out in the way that it made you a little stronger since you made it through. So I guess,
I never really feel that way, though. Like,
yeah. Right, the silver lining, right? So what about, have you ever been in a situation where you've delivered something and you're like, yeah, this is going to be a good one, and then there's just silence and there's
oh, yeah.
no reaction? How did you turn that around? How did you handle that?
It's kind of different every time. I can't remember. You remember the old TV show Tarzan, the guy in the jungle, and you know, he's swinging his underwear. And I was young comic, and I had this Tarzan joke, and I remember how it went, but I just couldn't get it to work. It was just not getting anything, and I couldn't figure out how to make it funny. I don't know if people didn't know enough about Tarzan to get the joke, and I don't even remember how the joke went. But I finally ended up dropping it because I just couldn't find a way to make it work. But I've had other jokes that don't work right away, but I'm like, well, there's something there. I just haven't found the way to get there yet. And a few of them have taken quite a bit of time to figure out how to make it work. And usually it's worth the effort if I think it's funny enough. But there are a few I throw out and it's just not funny to anybody but me. And I go, well, I just have to drop that one. So sometimes I work on them and sometimes I just let them go.
So how does that impact you in the moment when all of a sudden you're waiting for that laughter and there is none? How does that impact you, like on stage, to not have that laughter come back when you're anticipating it, right?
It's disappointing, but it doesn't hang me up. And I think one of the things that comics, a common mistake I see with newer comedians, if you have one of those and it doesn't work or you bomb, or especially if you have a few in a row that don't work, you have to acknowledge the fact that they're not laughing, because now there's this tension in the room where it's like, does he know that these aren't funny? And you know, if you have a joke that doesn't work, you can always do a little recovery line to go, well, you know, I guess that's only funny to me or something. You have to acknowledge it somehow, and that will release the tension and get a laugh anyway, because people go, yeah, we everybody knows that was a stinker joke, you know. But I've seen comics just have a few bad jokes in a row and they don't acknowledge it, and it's awkward. You have to say something. You have to go, okay, whatever. But and sometimes that can be funny in itself. There's a certain kind of comedy like called a recovery artist, where you tell an intentionally bad joke. It's like a groaner, and then the funny part is how you kind of get out of it. You know, it's like, oh, I make fun of that bad joke, but you told the bad joke on purpose. So there's
Oh,
not many people that do that, but I've known a few that just tell bad jokes and then they get out of it in a funny way. So that's different too.
huh. I had no
You have
idea.
to acknowledge a bad joke or two in a row. If you have
Yeah.
too many, maybe you just go home and work on your show.
Yeah, I can see that. I've been in workshops. I taught this workshop. It was this international workshop, and it was on Zoom. And, I said a couple of things, and I'm like, so any questions? Anybody want to say anything? And just crickets. And then I'm like, anyone, just crickets. And I'm like, hey, can anyone hear, can you guys hear me? Is
Yeah.
my mic work? Because then I'm like, is there a technical issue? What's happening? And then people were like, oh yeah, okay. I'm like, okay, just wanted to make sure because I thought we were going somewhere, but maybe not. So
Yeah.
I'm like,
And
cool,
it
let's move
worked.
on. Yeah, I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I'll
So
do that all the time. I have a joke that doesn't hit. I'm like, is this coming out in German? Are you guys okay? What's happening? You have to say something to get the laugh. Like if they don't laugh, like what is that? What's the problem here?
yeah, yeah. So how important would you say sound is to what you do, both in the delivery and then what's around you when you are delivering it? How important would you say sound is to that process?
For stand-up comedy, it's crucial because it's just such a raw art. It's a low art form, I think. It's one of the more vulgar art forms, but I still believe it's an art form. But the sounds of your words are all you have, and your facial expressions and stuff. And that's a lot of people just deliver it dry. Now, if you're one of those big, act things out type people, that really helps because it gives them something more to watch. But just basically all you have is your words. And if you can't be heard, the sound system's lousy, if people are being noisy, I mean, all that just takes away from what you're saying. That's why I don't open for bands and stuff too much because people go to see a rock show. They're there, yeah, and they don't want to hear a comic. They're not there for that. They're there to drink beer and scream. And I've done a few of those, and it's not good. They're not good because the sound is so important to stand-up comedy, and in a different way that's important to music. Music has to have its own set of sound and stuff, but comedy definitely sound is half the battle, and it amazes me how many people get it wrong. In my opinion, all you need is a light and a stool and a microphone, and we can do comedy. And half the people, the light's terrible, the mic's uh, cutting in and out, and just bad sound issues have messed up many shows that I've been on.
Yeah, it makes a difference, right?
Makes a huge difference. They'll give
Yeah.
you a cordless mic and the battery dies halfway through, and then we got to stop and find a battery for this microphone in the middle of the show. Oh, just sound
I,
issues are all over the place.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So let's switch it over. So pre-COVID and now coming out of COVID, and you were playing both actively, so performing both, I should say. So difference post-COVID in how the performances are and the dynamic of the rooms, the crowds, things of that nature. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, I really do get the sense that people have gotten too used to watching television. They were locked inside for a year. They got used to watching TV. And they come to a live performance, and I just feel a definite drop in the energy. They're still having fun, but you get the feeling that they're just not used to being back out yet. It's just kind of like it's more TV to them. But it's picking up, and people are happy to be out. But I really feel like we get a lot more smilers now, just kind of smiling. But I feel like it's gradually picking up. And there were some clubs that I worked right when they started opening back up, and they'd take your temperature when you came in, and they had social distancing, and it just didn't feel normal. So the whole thing was kind of like, another thing about laughter and people laughing is I think that's why clubs are kept dark, because if the lights are bright, nobody really wants to laugh too much, because they don't want everyone seeing what they're laughing at. When it's dark, you feel safer to laugh at things that you really think are funny. And when people are very spaced out, the same thing, because they hear laughter coming from that area, well, that's only two people over there. It must have been them. So, I think when it's dark and people are huddled together and everything's normal, it's the best. But COVID made the whole room seem different, very different. And it was
Yeah.
harder. It was much harder to perform there.
Yeah, like you said, the energy is different. It's a different energy. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where things go, I think, and where the energy shifts or doesn't shift. So, what are some of your favorite sounds?
The sounds in general.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, like, for example, I know, a couple people have said, like, the sound of water or wind. I can tell you that one of my personal favorite sounds is a mourning dove. Like, there's something about that sound for me when I hear it. It doesn't matter what else is going on. It doesn't matter. As soon as I hear it, it instantly puts me at peace. So, do you have
Mm-hmm.
any sounds like that for you?
Well, I I have a lot of, I'm very big into music. I love music, and there are certain songs and stuff that just, man, they do it for me. And all genres, jazz, rock and roll, stuff like that. Not so much country, which is surprising to a lot of my fans. I'm just not a country music guy. But I really like the sound of things like words. Like words are my kind of my work, and like I like Episcopalian, aside from what it means, I just like the sound of that word. I like pistachio, just words that have a little pizzazz to them. So those are very pleasing. If somebody uses a really cool word, I'm always like, oh, that was good. Even on television, I'm like, wow, you don't hear that word every day. So those, I just, when I hear cool words, is kind of nice.
Do you have a favorite word?
Well, money, money's a good word. But no, that just several words that just pop up and spring to mind. Like I said, pistachio, Episcopalian. What's the word? Melee. Melee is a good one. I could probably make you a whole list of stuff that I just like the sound of.
Now, let me ask you, does it matter who's saying it? Does the voice come into play for that
Yes.
with you?
Yeah, there's a couple of a lot of people don't like, I don't know if they don't like it, but they don't listen to, say, British comics because they feel they're hard to understand. But I love the way British people speak. It sounds so, it's musical to me. And some of them are better at it than others, but there's certain writers and lecturers that I've listened to. And I mean, I will put it on at night and I don't even care what they're saying. I mean, it's kind of, I've heard it before and I just want to listen to it again because I love the way they talk. I love the way they speak. And it's just, that sounds really, it's almost like music to me to listen to some of these people. Christopher Hitchens is a good example if you ever listen to him speak, and a few other people. um, but yeah, that's the kind of stuff that just, to my ear, it just makes me happy.
Yeah, no, I get that. I totally understand that. Morgan Freeman's that person for me. He's one of
Yeah,
them.
that's a
It
good
doesn't
example.
matter what he's saying. If he's talking, I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, it's just kind of peaceful. And
Yeah.
then there are other languages. Like I think French is, of course, a beautiful language. But then, even as rough and it's as harsh sounding as, say, German. With that, I don't know how they, but it's just it's kind of rough, but it's still kind of interesting. It's just, it's neat. I don't know what they're talking about, but the sounds of it are cool. But it's not, definitely not as pretty as, say, French or something like that. But
Yeah.
all that registers in my ear when I listen to stuff like that.
Totally. I love it. I really do. The drum set in the background. So you were talking about you're into music. You've got a drum set back there. You've got some photos. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I have a little garage band here, and we like to play and make noise, and we're just doing it for fun. We know we're not going to be the Foo Fighters, and we don't have any desire to be. But I'll tell you, I watch a lot of live music. I love going to concerts, and even in a bar. If they have a good band and a good bar band, and I've actually been someone who'll go up and buy a shot or tip the sound guy, the guy in the back running the board, because he's as much as part of the band as the band is. And if you go into a bar and you hear a band that sounds good, or a concert where they sound good, there's people responsible for that, because bands can sound really bad really easily. So, sometimes I've gone up and bought the sound guy a shot and go, man, you're like the sixth member of this band and you're nailing it. So, but yeah, we just do it for fun. But we're getting better. We got about 12 songs, playing some David Bowie covers and stuff, and it's just fun and uh, something to do. I had an extra room, so we set up a drum kit. That's pretty much what happened.
That sounds like a blast. Yeah, absolutely. Good way to spend time
And
for
I want a
sure.
gong like you have. I'd love to have a gong and light it on fire like Led Zeppelin did.
I did not know this, really.
Yeah, watch John Bonham when he's banging. He's on fire and his stick's on fire. But it looks a lot like the one on the left there that you have.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Well, I'll have to check that out. Thank you for the tip. And sound in the future, how do you think it'll be used?
It could go a lot of different ways. I don't think comedy will change much. I think comedy's got to be just the microphone in the audience and as much quiet as possible. But I see a lot of trends in music and stuff like auto tune. These people, they use auto tune, and can they really sing that, or is that the machine doing it for you? And I feel like auto tune's ruining a lot of music in a way, because it's not something they can go recreate live, unless they have the auto tune going. And I feel like if you can't hit the note, don't try to hit the note. But then now we have technology that everybody can be Mariah Carey all of a sudden. It's like, well, I don't know about that. So I feel I have mixed emotions. I mean, sometimes it sounds good, but you also know that's not really them, you know. So I'm more of along the lines of people who can actually do it without any help whatsoever. I'm like, that's talent. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I just spoke with he's a sound engineer and producer and mixer, and his name's Tom Swarovski, and he did the last Bruce Springsteen album. And we just went through that whole journey of what it takes when a band's in the studio and all the different components of putting that together and how different it could sound depending on how you manipulate the sounds. And what you said, like the auto tune, he was telling us some secrets into that world. And even when people go out on stage to perform, that sometimes it's enhanced so much that it was such a fascinating journey, which I had no idea that some of these things happen. But now it makes sense, because when you see somebody out there dancing and going crazy and you're like, how are they not getting winded at all?
exactly.
And now it's like, oh yeah, so it's kind of like the eyes behind the curtain, the person back there, the person that you're describing, that is the additional member making it all happen, right?
Well,
So
speaking of Led Zeppelin, I saw an interview with the guitar player, Jimmy Page, and he said back in the 60s, if he wanted to sound more echoey, he had to move his amp into the bathtub or take it upstairs. Now you get these programs where you just click through and it's got a million different reverbs and echoes. And, Jimmy Page is just like, oh, must be nice. I used to have to carry this amp all over the house to find the right spot. And, I mean, it's gotten a lot easier, but I think it's made us maybe a little lazy and reliant on it. So I don't know, but I think in music, that's still going to be the future of sound. I think that this technology is going to make everything just easier for everyone to use, and it gets more, what do they call that? Interactive friendly every time a new version comes out. So very simple now to make yourself sound good with music. So
absolutely. Well, James,
maybe my band needs that. We definitely need that.
I'm sure you guys are great.
Yeah, we could use some auto tune, I'm sure.
Is there anything you would like to add?
Well, I think it's a great project that you're doing here, and I never really thought about how much sound does affect the comedy world. I've been until you brought this up, and that's why when I first heard it, I'm like, this is a very interesting project, because I've known some of these things, but I've never really vocalized them to anybody. So this is a very unique avenue that you've chosen, and I think it's really interesting, and maybe if enough people hear about this, some things might change. Like, hey, we got to have a good sound system. We got to get, we got to there's so many things that can go wrong sonically in any kind of performance, that I think people could use a little more time putting some thought into that, because it can really mess up a show if it's not right. So.
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time and for sharing everything you did, because I can't imagine being out there and you're in the middle of your performance and all of a sudden the batteries go dead on the mic, like you had said earlier. Oh, how do you recover from that, right? So, yeah,
sometimes you don't.
things. yeah, it changes the whole experience for everyone, I'm sure. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time out today. And where can people find you?
JamesJohann.com. It's just my name.com, or they call me the Rural Genius. That was a little nickname I made up. It'll all take you to the same place. And then I'm on Facebook a lot. I don't tweet much because I don't get it. I have more to say than 35 characters. So I just don't use Twitter much, but I'm on there, but I don't use it. But Facebook and my website, you can find me. And then I got some new videos on dry bar comedy that are free and family friendly. So that's good too. If you want to hear some good, clean comedy, Dry Bar is the place to check me out.
Okay. And is it drybar.com? Is that what it is?
Yeah, drybarcomedy.com, and just download the app, and there's hundreds of comedians on there for free, and you can watch. You can even go in and choose. I don't want to hear politics. I don't want to hear. You can actually filter what you want to hear. So it's really cool, and everybody on there's it's good for 12-year-old ears if you want the kids to listen. So that's cool too.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again so much. I really appreciate the time, Lisa. Thank you so much. And yeah, hopefully when the stars align, I'll come out and check out one of your shows. So yeah, okay. Thank you for what you do.
Heckling.
I won't be that heckler for sure. So, all right. Thank you so much. Yeah, I know. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.